Good evening, Gills fans. Welcome back to Gills in the Blood TV. First of all, we hope you're all doing well and looking after yourselves and each other and taking all the right precautions in what is a very troubling and unprecedented time that we're all living in at the moment. The world is a funny old place, courtesy of this coronavirus and COVID-19. Football, plus pretty much every other sport, is on complete lockdown. And like I say, it makes for a weird world that we're living in at the moment. But we've had a period of time where the channel's been quiet, and I put a tweet out a couple of days ago just making sure that everyone was okay and making sure that they were aware we were still about, and asked for ideas for the channel, because obviously content is difficult at the moment because all of our videos revolve around current news and day-to-day stuff that's going on at the football club in terms of match previews, match day lives and match reviews. And Gabe Sutton, who runs the Football Lab, came to me on Twitter last night with a suggestion for a video, and this is what we're putting together. So Gabe's idea was a series of questions that he's answered and I've answered regarding the Gills and the season so far and moving forward, whenever that may be. Obviously from a fan's point of view, which is myself, and from an outsider looking in, which is Gabe. Gabe has WhatsApped me his answers, but I've not watched them yet. So what we do is put a graphic up on the screen of each question, and then you'll get the views of both of us. Yeah, hopefully it'll be an interesting listen, an interesting watch. And then, as always, we'll ask you to comment down below on YouTube, get involved on Twitter and Facebook, and let us know your thoughts on everything that's been going on as well. And it'd be nice just to have some football to talk about. So, yeah, first category, question, topic, subject, whatever you want to call it, is coming up on your screen now. The manager, Steve Evans. I'll go first. Like I say, I've not seen Gabe's answers yet. I'm looking forward to watching them and getting his point of view as well, because he knows a lot about lower league football, from the Championship down to League Two, and always enjoy chatting to him on social media or on the phone via WhatsApp. He's a good lad, he knows his stuff. But yeah, Steve Evans is subject number one, and I think divisive was probably the first word that we used when it was announced that he was coming in to take charge of Gillingham Football Club. Plenty of fans didn't want him, to the extent that they've not been to watch us this season, which I think is a shame. But as I've said on plenty of occasions, that's the individual's call. But they are missing out on watching a better Gillingham Football Club, a better version of the team that we want to be. Steve and Paul Rayner and Paul Scally all went on a massive charm offensive as soon as they were appointed. We've had question and answer sessions, which I think have been well received. We wanted, obviously, results to be better, our football team to be better. And I think in that sense, we can't argue with things. After a slow start, in which Steve and Paul Rayner both admitted they were trying to implement things, trying to change the way we play, trying to change the way we think, the mentality of the players, the football club, the fan base, everyone. They'd done that. It took a while. I think it was only 2 wins in the first 2 months of the season. We was only averaging a point per game up until the end of September. I think with wins against Bolton and Wickham. But slowly but surely, he got things moving, got us going in the right direction. We're a much harder team to beat. We've got good footballers. We don't have a big squad. And I'm happy to sit here now, as we sit in the middle of March, and admit that I think Steve Evans has changed my mind. I'm a big fan. I think what he's done is what pretty much 90% of the fan base wanted us to be harder to beat, wanted us to be playing better football. Whether that's more attractive football, that's up to each individual, but mainly to be getting better results, and we've been doing that. So I think Steve Evans has done a really good job. But now I'll pass you over to Gabe and let you know his thoughts.
I think you have to respect really what Steve Evans has done. I think if I look at previous Gillingham sides, a little bit easy to play against at certain times, certainly under the previous 2 regimes. I think Evans has made the Gills much harder to play through, and I think that's an important aspect of his work. And the other thing I would say is that I think he's almost better at working with kind of a squad that's kind of a middling level on paper, rather than working with maybe a sort of pushing top six squad, because I think when he was at Peterborough, they had a lot of sort of enigmatic players that he didn't quite get the best of. Like, they sort of won their first 5 games or so through like clinical finishing and things like that. But then after that, the football became kind of a bit arduous, and they didn't really have the players to sort of always necessarily facilitate what he wanted to do there. Whereas I think with Gillingham, there's the right mix of qualities. There's some technical ability in there, but also I think there's the physicality, certainly at the top end of the pitch with Mandron and now Akinde, to really make it able to do what he wants to do. And so I think you'd have to say it's been impressive work. He's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I think ultimately he's going to be judged on results, and so far he's getting them.
Question 2 now, and Gabe's second question was thoughts on the board or the chairman. We don't really have a massive board, do we? I think it all comes down to Paul Scally, and he's not perfect, is my view, but how many chairmen are? There's not many that are as visible as, Andy Holt and Dara McCanty on Twitter, and that's understandable. You'd imagine most of the time these types of figures are only going to get grief, but I think Steve Evans has been ably backed by our chairman this season. He's done what he can. He's given him as much budget as he can to bring in players that he wanted, because we knew there was going to be a massive overhaul of the playing squad back in the summer, because quite frankly we've not been good enough for 2 or 3 seasons prior to Steve arriving, and I think Paul Scally's gone a long way. There was a huge number of signings that came in back in the summer transfer window. Some have worked, some haven't so much, some have sort of been in the middle, but we'll get onto that more in the next question. He's been ably supported by the chief executive that come on board in the last year or so, which is Tom Lawrence, who's been great in terms of season ticket initiatives and changing the whole dynamic of the Medway stand, creating a family area. There's an extra mascot now. We now have Tommy Trueblue and his girlfriend. A name's I've forgotten at the moment, unfortunately, but season tickets went out really early this year. Really good discounts on pricing for 2021. Whenever that starts, there were good discounts from 2019-20 as well, and they got the players involved. They've made social media more interactive, more accessible. So I think they deserve credit as well, the media team, for what they're putting out on Twitter and Facebook. And obviously, we had a good cup run. We saw off Sunderland and Doncaster en route to the 3rd round, where we were beaten by West Ham, and Paul Scally dipped his hand in his pocket. We paid a fee for Big John Akinde in the January transfer window. I probably haven't seen the best of him yet, but I think that's one that in the future will definitely reap the rewards of. So overall, if you're looking at this season, I think the chairman or the board have been really good. Let's hope that it continues moving forward. But obviously, in what are very tricky times at the moment with no income for football clubs, maybe we'll have to strap in for a little while and sit tight. But overall, I think Paul Scally's been okay this season, and he's not done a lot wrong. And now, over to you, Gabe, again.
Well, I think Paul Scally has had his fair share of criticism in his time as Gillingham chairman, and I think sometimes the lack of transparency can be a bit of a problem to some Gillingham fans, and I can completely understand that, because I think as a fan you want to sort of feel like you're involved, or you kind of have an idea of what's going on at the club internally. Sometimes clubs aren't always able to share the information, but you look at clubs that are really doing well, somewhere like Accrington Stanley with Andy Holt, who's very transparent about everything he does, and I can understand why some fans might be a little bit envious of that in some respects, but at the same time I think he's kept Gills financially stable, which I think is a really important thing in the modern era of football, especially when you look at the situation with Bury and how close even Bolton were to going out of business, and now Macclesfield and Southend as well. So I think that has to be a consideration. And also you would have to say that he's backed Steve Evans. He also backed Steve Lovell sort of in January last season with a few good important additions at that stage. So I think you've got to give him some credit from that respect. He might not be perfect, but I think there are some good aspects to the job that he does as chairman as well.
From the chairman and the board, we move on to recruitment in more detail, and I think generally since the summer, throughout that transfer window and through January, it's generally been pretty decent. I think our League One position is testament to that. We're currently sat in the top half of the table with some aspirations of trying to gate crash the top 6 still, however small. Whether that'll ever happen, obviously we're not sure at the moment. How long is a piece of string with what's going on in the world? But yeah, I think overall there's probably only one or two that really haven't worked in terms of the summer recruitment. That'd be Lee Hodson and Usinu Cisse. Not saying they're bad players, just we haven't seen a lot of them due to the form of particularly Barry Fuller early part of the season at right back, and then the likes of Alfie Jones and Stuart O'Keefe and Mark Byrne in the early part of the season in midfield meant that Cisse couldn't get in the side. Gone out on loan, pair of them to St Mirren and Leyton Orient respectively, and hopefully maybe if they come back in the summer then they can stake their claim. If not, we wish them the best if they move along. But yeah, they're probably the two that have been the ones that haven't worked out the most. Early part of the season we had lone strikers Mikael and Jolly and Alex Jakubiak, who both now moved on. Both had different degrees of success. Alex Jakubiak actually left when he was our top scorer, but I think it was apparently wasn't going to be number one in terms of team selection once we readjusted the forward line in January. Mikael and Jolly looks to have ability, but again, really young, wasn't getting as many minutes, so he decided to go back to Bournemouth and go elsewhere. But we wish them best and continue to check them out throughout the rest of the season, whenever that is. What else then? Obviously, the big successes for me have been the likes of Stuart O'Keefe, who we signed on a free transfer. Alfie Jones and Tom O'Connor are on loan from Southampton. Credit to themselves, credit to their parent club. Ollie Lee, I think, has been superb on the whole. In the number 10 role, goals and assists in equal measure, I think. I think in terms of Mika Mandron, John Akindi, Matty Willock, we'll probably see more from them next season. I think John's come in, isn't fully match fit, and with the benefit of a pre-season, again, whenever that is, we'll see a flying John Akindi come 2021. Mika Mandron's a funny one. When he started games regularly, looked a good player, struggled off the bench a few times, then his partner gave birth, so he missed a bit of football, but the last game that we played at Sunderland, pretty much unplayable for 90 minutes and scored both goals. And Matty Willock, another one who suffered with injuries, unfortunately, I think we'll see the benefit of him in future seasons. Jordan Roberts and Jordan Graham look promising. Tricky now, unfortunately, in terms of do we take a punt on them moving forward, because will we play football again this season? And I think two more that we need to mention were Mark Marshall and Ben Pringle. Mark Marshall moved on. System didn't really suit the way he plays. A wide man hugs the touchline. We tend to favour the diamond, and Ben Pringle just found it tough to get into a midfield that's been predominantly defensive minded in that diamond. The number 10's the attacking outlet, and then the three behind have been the shield, so to speak. But be interesting to watch how we deal with Ben Pringle and whether we keep him on and try and retain him beyond this season. But yeah, I think overall on the whole, the recruitment has been pretty decent. And now we'll let you listen to Gabe's thoughts on the players that came in throughout the season.
I think if I look at the previous two managerial regimes at Gillingham, the recruitment was one of the things that hadn't quite got right. I mean, there's the odd good signing, but it felt to me as an outsider as like it was kind of 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 in terms of players that significantly enhanced the quality of the squad. Whereas I look at it now and it feels like under Steve Evans it's more like 2 in 3 or 3 in 4, and yes, there's the odd player that doesn't make the ideal contribution, but generally you look at someone like Alfie Jones that got on loan from Southampton. I think that was a good signing. Stuart O'Keefe, Premier League experience in midfield, that was really important. Mikael Mandron might not have got everyone's pulses racing as a signing initially, but I certainly think, as I mentioned earlier, he's someone who kind of facilitates the direct sale, and of course John Akinde does that as well. Thomas O'Connor as well would be another one. So I think there has been quality added to the squad, and I think there's a decent mix there. And I also think that it was important that Gillingham added a powerful striker in January in Akinde as something different to the other options there, like Jakubiak, who I think went back in January, and Brandon Hanlon, and people like that really. So I think there's a good mix to the squad, and I think that's helped by the improvement in terms of recruitment.
Next up, Gabe wanted to know my thoughts regarding Jack Bonham replacing Thomas Holy, and I think the biggest compliment we can pay Jack Bonham is we've not missed Thomas Holy at all. Deserved his move. He'd been really good for us for 2.5 seasons. Big Thomas went to Ipswich. He's been in and out of the side, in a struggling Ipswich side, relatively speaking. I mean, they're what, 9th or 10th in the league at the moment, but they should be in the top 6. We know that, and probably pushing for the top 2. But yeah, in terms of Jack Bonham, not the loudest keeper I've ever seen, not a bellower, not a shouter by all accounts, but he gets his point across when he needs to. Shot stopping ability is really good. calm and assured, authoritative in his 18-yard box when he has to, but decent coming to claim crosses. I think you could probably count the number of bad games he's had on a couple of fingers. He's made some really big saves, and I think the big stat is 15 clean sheets this season in 40 games for us is really, really good. If you're looking at 1 and 3, I think that's a superb stat, and he's at a great age for a goalkeeper. I think he'll continue to get better, and fingers crossed we can keep him beyond his contract and continue to see him flourish and us flourish with him. So all in all, yeah, like I say, the biggest compliment I think we can pay Jack Bonham is we've not missed Thomas Holy at all. Gabe?
So Jack Bonham has made 29 saves from close range this season, which I think is the 5th most in League One. So he's having a fantastic season. I think we've always known Bonham's a good shot stopper. I think he showed that in his early days on loan at Carlisle. But I think sometimes the issue with him has been kind of flapping at the odd thing. But I don't think really, from a Gillingham point of view, you could have too many complaints about the work he's done so far in terms of the number of clean sheets he's kept, rather a lot. And but the other thing I would say though is that when I think of Gillingham in previous seasons when they had Thomas Holy in goal, and it felt like I remember towards the end of Adrian Pennock's reign, you had Holy with that man of the match performance against Charlton, and you thought he's the one sort of keeping you in it. And now I feel like Bonham, he's certainly an asset to Gillingham, but it doesn't feel like the team's getting pumped every game and it's always about how the goalkeeper plays. It feels like the team's stronger collectively now, so I think that reduces the importance on the goalkeeper to an extent, but all credit to Bonham, he seems to be having a good season.
Obviously in front of your goalkeeper you have to have a solid back 4, a back 3, a back 5, whatever you choose to implement on day-to-day basis in terms of different matches. So Gabe wanted to know my thoughts on the defence and life after Gabriel Zakuani. I think similarly to my answer about Thomas Holy, we've not missed Gabriel Zakuani at all this season. And I think you have to give huge credit to Paul Rayner, because I think Steve Evans alluded to this at the recent question and answer session about how it's Paul that's done the majority of work with the back 4, with individuals, working with them collectively, working them with them on a one-to-one basis. I think Connor Ogilvie was the big one that's come out of this in terms of Steve said he'd never be a left back for him when he signed him in the summer at the pre-season Q&A. Well, Connor's excelled at left back for a few months now, since Jack Tucker's got into the side and played centre half alongside Max Amar. So you've got Connor Ogilvie, who's been a revelation. Paul Rayner's done wonders with him. You've got Jack Tucker, huge fine, nearly released in the summer, which is unbelievable now. We turned down a bid of about £1 million for him, if you believe rumours, in the January transfer window. Barry Fuller, despite age, still trying to threaten to catch up with him. It just keeps going. And that's the main reason why Lee Hodson had to go out on loan. Although I would like more competition for Barry in that right back area, because there is a risk of complacency setting in if you've not got any competition. Not that I'm saying Barry Fuller's doing that, but subconsciously you can just coast a little bit. And then obviously the final one is the captain, Max Amar's by far his best season, by far his most consistent campaign since he joined. And he's had some good seasons before, 2015-16, when he played with John Egan or Deji Osalaja or both of them. He was really good. Then obviously when we were battling relegation, he struggled a little bit, which is understandable. It's difficult when you're playing in a poor side and you have to constantly try and head and tackle and clear things, and you're not keeping the ball properly. But he's been superb. He's embraced the captaincy really well and just gone past 250 club appearances, which is an excellent statistic and an excellent achievement for Max. And it's incredible that 3 of that back 4 have been there for the last couple of seasons, or at least one season in terms of Barry, but Connor and Max have played a part in the last 2 seasons when we've been pretty shoddy defensively. So credit to the players, credit to the coaching staff, credit to Steve Evans and Paul Rayner. Gabriel Zakuani's not been missed, and we've gone from strength to strength defensively, and obviously that's because we've had a good shield in front of them as well. But credit the back 4 and the keeper, been really good. Let's have a listen now to what Gabe thinks on our defensive options.
Centre-back is an area that really interests me, because I think Zakuani started the season injured, and I think he was let go of quite early on. And I was really interested as an outsider to see how Max Amar would get on without a kind of quote-unquote dominant sort of defender, because I look at someone like Conor Gills. I think he's had an excellent season, really impressed me at Coventry earlier on in the campaign, and at Accrington Stanley when he played there as well. And I think he's had good games, but I don't necessarily think of Gills as the same type of defender as Zakuani, and obviously recently he's moved back to left back to bring Jack Tucker in, and Tucker's obviously played some games at right back, and be interested to get some Gills fans' views on him. I certainly thought he did a solid job at right back, but I don't necessarily see a Zakuani or a Leon Legg type sort of presence in that defence, and yet the defence has actually been fine in terms of defending the penalty area clearly, or else he wouldn't be getting the defence results that you have been. So certainly it's been impressive defensively, and the collective work has been very strong in terms of the organisation without the ball, and that diamond system is working for you. But yeah, I'd be really interested to know from Gills fans how you feel like you've got away being so strong defensively without having that kind of aerial beast in the side.
Next port of call was obviously a little bit further forward, and that was the midfield diamond. That's what Gabe wanted to talk about. Categorically think it's our best system. Steve Evans knew when he came to the football club that he had to make us harder to play against. He had to make us more steely. He had to make us more resolute in the middle of the park. He straight away mentioned that when he came here as Peterborough boss a couple of seasons ago, we were too easy to play through. So he's made us hard to beat. He's gone with a solid back four. Then he's got a natural defensive midfielder in Alfie Jones, who originally came as a centre-back, so he's defensively minded straight away. So is that a bit of luck, or is that just savvy from Steve Evans? Because Alfie's excelled in that role. He's then gone with, I think it was Stuart O'Keefe and Mark Byrne early part of the season in that role, either side, to give us more protection but legs to get up and down, and then we go with a number 10 in front of that. But yeah, I think kudos to everyone who's been involved in that. Like I say, Mark Byrne, we've not missed him since he suffered a cruciate ligament injury start of December, and again that's testament to the performances of those that have come in and replaced him. Thomas O'Connor moved from left back or left wing back to a left-sided midfield role, again defensively minded by nature, so it makes us more resolute automatically. It makes us defensively sound. Stuart O'Keefe, I think, was labelled by a few fans as maybe slightly underwhelming as a signing back in the summer. It's just got better and better as the campaign's gone on. Loves putting his foot in, loves making a tackle, and it's probably something that we've missed over the last few years. We've been too friendly, too nice to play against, and it's good to have a little bit of the old Gillingham back. People not afraid to put their foot in and stick up for their teammates and do the ugly side of the work, which is great. And then obviously in front of them we've had Ollie Lee, who's generally been very good in the 10 when he's played there. We haven't swayed away from this system too much, and when we have, I don't think it's worked as well. In recent weeks, we've tried 4-4-2 with natural wide men and a flat four to be more aggressive in an attacking sense, but then it's left us slightly open defensively. But yeah, all in all, midfield diamond I think's worked really well for us. Got Matty Willock now, can probably come in and improve us further next season once he's fully fit. Mark Byrne to be back in contention as well, because there's a chance we might lose Alfie Jones and Thomas O'Connor. But yeah, to sum up, we've been spot on. Take it away, Gabe.
Well, Alfie Jones has had a fantastic season for your lot, hasn't he? It seems like an excellent signing on loan from Southampton. He seems to have that bit of composure about him in terms of dictating play, as well as all the basics that you'd want from a holding midfielder at this level. So you'd imagine if he's not part of Southampton's plans next season, he will get championship offers. So he's somebody to get particularly excited about, and be interesting to see how Gills replace him next season. And you'd wonder about Mark Byrne, because I was actually a bit worried about how you'd cope without him when he got injured in early December. He's somebody I really like, his tenacity. But in fairness, I think Thomas O'Connor, since he's moved on, I think, sort of towards the left of the diamond rather than playing at left back, he seems to have adapted to that really well, having a nice range of qualities. And Stuart O'Keefe as well has got that Premier League experience in midfield too. So I think it seems to have come together well, and obviously Ollie Lee pushing a bit further on. He's starting to show his quality that he showed at Luton a couple of years ago. So I think the midfield is starting to look really well balanced, and you seem to be on top in a lot of games at the moment. So all credit to you to that, but could lose one or two of those players mentioned. Might have been on loan, so it'd be interesting to see how Steve Evans rebuilds the midfield in the summer, assuming you're in League One next season, which as expected.
0.7 of 9 on Gabe's checklist was our mixture of forwards. So obviously at the start of the season we started with Brandon Hanlon, who was here last year. We had Mika Mandron come in on a permanent, and then we had Mikael Jolly and Alex Jakubiak on loan from Bournemouth and Watford respectively. I think we had three that were probably too much the same in terms of Jakubiak and Jolly and Hanlon. They all want to play on the shoulder, all want to run in behind, all want to come short, whereas Mika was probably the one that looked like a target man in terms of size and stature, where he could ping it into his head, ping it into his chest, and he could play with his back to goal. So we changed it up in January. I mean, Alex Jakubiak was decent when he played, had really good feet, knew where the back of the net was. Mikael and Jolly suffered from being incredibly inconsistent, but I think there's a good kid in there. There'll be a good player in a couple of seasons, but maybe wasn't quite ready for the rigours of League One. So they were both moved out in January. They got replaced by Jordan Roberts on loan from Ipswich Town and John Akindi on a permanent deal. I think John, proven at this level, proven at lower league level, is a better option than Mikael and Jolly. Jordan Roberts comes in, offers us something in terms of versatility. He can play through the middle, he can play from the side. He's even played in the 10 when needed, but I don't think that's his best role. So at the moment, yeah, I think we've got a good mix. If you want to pigeonhole into two sections, we've got Brandon and we've got Jordan that can play wide or can play slightly deeper, get in between the lines, drop short, run at players with their pace and power. And then we've got John Akindi, Mika Mandron, more target man types in terms of their size, like I mentioned, can link up play with others, probably won't score you 20 goals a season, but they'd probably create plenty of chances. And again, I think it'd be interesting whether we go with that set of forwards next season. Brandon, I know, is out of contract. John Akindi's ours, we know that. Mika Mandron's ours, we know that. And I know Jordan Roberts is out of contract at Ipswich, so that'd be one to keep an eye on. But if we started the first day of next season with them four, with the benefit of a pre-season, I wouldn't be entirely disappointed. We know Brandon has to bring more goals to his game, but he does offer lots in other areas. But yeah, it's been one area we know we've been short of this season. We haven't scored loads, we've not been prolific. We've not replaced the goals of Tom Eaves, but that was always going to be tricky with a small budget. But in terms of what the four forwards that we did have, what we have got now, they all offer different attributes and different strengths. And I think there's certainly something to work with in terms of all of them. Let's have a listen now to what Gabe thinks.
I always think really that you've got to judge a Steve Evans side based on how they play with a target man, because if you're going long without a target man, then it's completely pointless because the opposing centre-backs are going to gobble up the duels quite easily. So regardless of how good the individual strikers are, they've got to be the right style to fit the system. And I would say that at the moment you seem to have that really with Mandron. You know, not necessarily, as I mentioned earlier, a signing that was going to get everyone really excited, because he wasn't necessarily firing on all cylinders in the division below, but that seemed to be in more of a possession-based Colchester side, whereas I think Gills play direct under Evans, and I think that suits his skill sets really. And I think in the first half of the season he was different to anything else Gills had up top, because someone like Brandon Hanlon, very willing runner, I really like his energy. Mikael Anjoli the same. I think he brings a lot of mobility in that respect, and Jakubiak even had that great game against Blackpool where he was kind of cutting in from the left hand side onto his right foot, and he's shown a bit of potential as well. But I think in terms of that real sort of hold up point to bring all those players into the game, I think Mandron is really important in that respect, and of course Akinde brings that extra goal scoring dimension, and he's sort of shown that as well. So I like the mix of strikers. I think it was really important to add Akinde, and maybe that if you'd had this group of players earlier on in the season, when you weren't solely relying on Mandron to be that physical focal point, then maybe you might have a stronger chance of the playoffs, which we'll never know. But certainly the building blocks are in place for next season. So yeah, I think in terms of the attack, Akinde has made a difference.
Penultimate point is summer priorities moving forward when we ever get to a new pre-season. Seems a long way off at the moment with what's going on in the world, doesn't it? But priority to me would be a new contract for the skipper, and I'd like to think that we'll be doing that before the summer. Max Amor is out of contract, like I say, 250 plus club appearances. Mr. Consistent this season. It's been great alongside Jack Tucker, nurturing him through games and coaxing him through fixtures, and I think it'd be just reward if we give Max Amor another 2 or 3 years. It'd be great if he ended his career here, because I think he's a fan's favourite now based on his performances this campaign. More general, obviously, just to continue to improve, build on what we've started to create this season. Let's hope that Steve Evans and Paul Rayner see this as a slightly more long-term project. We knew it wasn't going to be instant. We don't have the budget for it to be instant, but there's plenty of good players within this football squad. not just the lone stars, but the people that we've got in on a permanent basis that are actually ours. And if we can add to that, then we can kick on again. Obviously, replacing or keeping the loan players is going to be of paramount importance. Whether we can get Alfie Jones and Tom O'Connor back, I'm not so sure. I stated very early in the campaign that I think Alfie Jones will be playing Premier League pretty shortly. Tom O'Connor could probably do a job in the Championship. Ollie Lee, I'm not sure what his contract situation is. I'm not sure whether he's out of contract this summer, but it'd be one I'd love to get back. I think he wants to move back down this way. He's born and bred around in the south of England, so that'd be one I'd definitely want us to get involved in. I'd love the other two to come back in some capacity as well. But in terms of the system that we've already spoke about, we tend to play 4-4-2 diamond, so we probably don't need wingers. So that'd make it interesting in terms of Ben Pringle's situation. Naturally a wide left player by trade, but may have adapted his game slightly because of age and things like that. He's now 31, 32, so he's going to change the way he plays. People like Jordan Roberts, Brandon Hanlon can play as strikers but can offer us width if need be. We've seen that. So that might be one or two that we look to keep or to try and get in, because they can give us versatility and flexibility if we do need to change the system, because you do need to play more than one formation. You can't just rely on it all the time. You have to change it as per your opponents and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously the main thing is to continue to improve and make sure that those that are out of contract or coming to the end of their deals, we try to tie down to new contracts, and those that may be out of contract with their parent clubs, we can look at getting in the likes of Jordan Roberts, maybe Jordan Graham. But again, he's probably in a similar situation to someone like Mark Marshall. The system doesn't really suit the way he plays. We don't play with loads of width, but he seems to be a good player. I think Steve Evans has said that he can play as a 10 as well. So if Ollie Lee doesn't work out and Regan Charles Cook's out of contract in the summer, he might decide to move on, or we might decide to move him on. Then maybe Jordan Graham's an option in that role. But again, it's something to keep an eye on. This is what Gabe thinks of the whole situation.
So in terms of the summer priorities, I would suggest you need to address the full-back areas, mainly because Jack Tucker, I would imagine, whether or not you see him as a centre-back or as a right-back, he's probably going to get offers, isn't he, from elsewhere, because he's a huge talent. I know Steve Evans thinks very highly of him, and as much as I'm a massive admirer of Barry Fuller's professionalism, his commitment to the game, I'm sure he's someone you guys really admire. I'm not sure at his age I'd necessarily want him starting every week for the volume of games that you'd have to play next season. So I would imagine that Steve Evans will be looking at a kind of rotation option there, and probably the same with at left back, because obviously a Gills might have to come into centre back every week if Tucker goes. So you'd imagine a left back would be a priority, because obviously Thomas O'Connor is going to get recalled by Southampton. Now I don't know, in terms of O'Connor and Alfie Jones, I don't know what the details are in terms of the likelihood of you getting. I mean, Jones is probably going to get probably going to be playing his trade elsewhere, but in terms of O'Connor or even Ollie Lee, so a bit of a rebuilding work there, I would imagine, in that midfield, not by choice but by force, because you don't own a lot of the players in that area. You'd hope, I suppose, from your point of view, that Matty Willett can step up. You know, he's had sort of some injury issues that has derailed his career, his Gills career a little bit, and obviously Regan Charles Cook. Is there more to come from him? We shall see. He's had a lot of chances, you'd have to say, at League One level, and I like Charles Cook when he's got a bit of space to kind of run into, because he can use his sort of athleticism from that point of view with those driving runs. But I think in tighter areas, my perception would be that he can struggle that little bit more. So yeah, I would imagine a bit of a rebuilding area in that midfield, and obviously you'd hope Byrne can come back in. And I think Akinde's on a permanent deal, isn't he? So you would hope that the striker position is pretty nailed on. And yeah, I think certainly the building blocks are in place for the squad, but I think that midfield area and the full-back positions will probably need to be looked at.
Final part for the evening is next season, closing the gap. Gabe wants to know what we need to do. I think first and foremost, we need to make sure that we keep adding quality and quantity to the squad. A squad that consists of 18 senior pros at the moment, excluding the injured Mark Byrne, of which 5 are not ours. Thomas O'Connor, Alfie Jones, Jordan Roberts, Jordan Graham and Ollie Lee are all on loan. I mean, it'd be great if we could get them all back in some capacity. That'd make it a lot easier for all of us, but football doesn't work like that. It's not a computer game. You'd imagine that Alfie Jones may be looked at by Southampton to be involved in their squad, so then you need to find a holding midfielder, Stuart O'Keefe could probably come in there, and then you could play Mark Byrne from the side of a diamond, but we're going to need more options. Steve Evans has admitted that he's gambled slightly in the January transfer window and gone for quality over quantity, but in terms of flexibility and room for manoeuvre with injuries and suspensions, it's left us very little. He's admitted since the end of the transfer window that we've had to put people on the bench that are probably not fit to feature. And yeah, we don't want the wrong type of player coming in. We don't want to be signing individuals for the sake of it. You don't want people that are coming in just for a free pay packet and a ride, but we will need a bigger squad if we want to compete, if we really want to push on and get in that top 6 or beyond, because we've had a really good season so far. Whatever happens now, whether it gets completed or voided, we don't know, but the 35 games that we've played, we've only lost 8, and that's a phenomenal statistic considering we lost 21 league games last season. We're a lot better at home. We've won more than we have in the last couple of seasons put together, I think. The away form's been really good. We're resolute, we're hard to beat. We've only lost 3. We've only won 3. I know draw specialists is a good thing and a bad thing in the sense that it means we're hard to beat, but are we missing a little bit of stardust, a little bit of sparkle potentially? But again, we have to trust Steve Evans and Paul Rayner and Paul Scally and Tom Lawrence to be getting out there and looking at players and getting deals over the line. And it's been a good campaign, whatever happens from here on in, like I say. And if we want to kick on next season and close the gap on them teams that are in the top 6, because if you look, for instance, we've only lost 1 in our last 17, but them teams above us have continued to play well. The gap's still 8 points, I think, at the moment as it stands to the top 6. Where in other seasons, whether the quality of the league overall is not so good or really good, you're not sure. But them teams above us have continued to go on good unbeaten runs, and we've probably not got as close as we'd like to have or may have done if we put together this kind of run in previous seasons. But we've got all the bases covered. We've got the basis of a good squad, and we've got the basis to kick on next season. Right, let's have a listen to what Gabe's got to say on this final point.
I reckon if Gills can address the areas that I've just mentioned in the summer, then I do feel like they've got a chance of pushing that top 6 next season. As I've mentioned before, Steve Evans isn't going to be everyone's favourite in terms of his sort of touchline conduct, but I think the one thing that you really wouldn't question is his ability to drill a side into shape in terms of letting every player know in no uncertain terms what's required of them off the ball, and I think that really helps in terms of the way that the team presses in the first half of games or even in the second half when they've got to defend in kind of those last ditch moments. And I certainly think the fundamentals seem to be in place, the working culture seems to be in place, so I think Steve Evans has got a lot of teams right. It's just a question of whether can add those touches of quality in midfield and those fullback areas, whether you can sort of push that top 6 next season and really sort of start to close the gap, because I think I would have to say League One it's been probably standards are were relatively low for the top 2 this year comparatively, but actually very high for the top 6. So I do think that a lot of work's got to go in for Gillingham to really close that gap, but I certainly think they're capable of doing it.
It's been an absolute pleasure for this one, Gabe. Really appreciate you getting in contact and giving me a kick up the backside, to be quite honest, because it was just drifting, and with all that's going on with this coronavirus, it can be difficult for people to motivate themselves. But I've really enjoyed this and having a chat, and it's not direct, but obviously we both put our thoughts together, and we hope you've enjoyed watching it. And yeah, give us your views on all the subjects that have been covered. Like I say, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you can comment on. Go and follow Gabe at the Football Lab. Go and check out his website. He does some really good writing, knows his stuff. Gives some good tips on betting as well. Gives some not so good tips at times. But yeah, it's been really fun. It's been great to be able to talk about football and have a distraction from everything else at the moment. As always, you know where we are. Like I said at the beginning of the video, keep safe, look after each other. Until next time, up the Gills.